Hey, Jason here from Simply Swider. If your Bosch washer is showing an F8 or F08 error code and appears completely dead, don't panic. I'm going to walk you through the exact steps to diagnose and fix this issue. The best part? Most of these solutions cost under $50 and can save you a $200 service call. But first, always remember to unplug your washer before starting any repairs for your safety. Before we get started, if you run into any questions, jump into our Facebook group, links in the description. We've got thousands of people helping each other fix their appliances, and I pop in there daily to help out. Now, here's the thing about this F8 error. It's one of those codes that can mean completely different things depending on which Bosch model you've got. And that's exactly what trips people up. One person's looking up door latch fixes when their problem is actually motor brushes or vice versa. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes. This error is your washer telling you there's been some kind of mechanical or electrical interruption. Could be the door safety system, could be motor wear, or on certain models, it's actually a water level sensor problem. Real world breakdown. Door interlock issues are the big one on most front loaders. Motor brush problems show up mainly on the older WFK series, and pressure sensor faults are pretty specific to top load or inverter models. So we're going to tackle these in order of how often I actually see them in the field. So the most common culprit here is that door latch assembly. I had this lady call me last week in a panic. Her washer was completely dead, wouldn't respond to any buttons, nothing. She was convinced the main board was fried. Turns out there was a sock caught in the door and it wasn't fully closing. That's it. Here's what's happening. Your Bosch has a safety lockout system that won't let the cycle start if it thinks the door is open. Sometimes it's user error, doors
Come
not
on,
pushed shut
work.
firm enough, or there's
Why won't
clothing
you turn
blocking the
on?
latch. But more
I
often,
just want to
those
do the
plastic tabs
laundry.
on the door lock assembly break off over time. These things take a beating. You're slamming that door shut multiple times a day for years. The plastic just fatigues and cracks. You'll know this is your problem because the machine shows F-08 right at startup, won't accept any inputs, and the door might not make that satisfying click when you close it. Here's your first diagnostic step that takes just 10 minutes. First, unplug the washer and wait exactly 10 minutes for the control board to reset. Next, inspect the door seal area for any clothing or debris, then close the door firmly until you hear a definitive click sound. Plug the machine back in and test. If this doesn't resolve the F8 error, you'll know the door lock assembly needs replacement. If that doesn't work, pop the door open and look at the latch mechanism. You're looking for broken plastic pieces or tabs that aren't engaging properly. This one's specific to the older WFK series and some other models with brushed motors. I remember this guy who called me about his WFK unit. Machine would fill up with water just fine, would drain at the end, but wouldn't spin or tumble at all. Classic worn brush symptoms right there. Think of carbon brushes like brake pads for your motor. They're designed to wear down over time through normal use. These small rectangular blocks conduct electricity to make your motor spin. When they wear down to less than half an inch, about the width of your thumb, they lose contact and your motor stops working completely. You can actually see this wear pattern when you remove them from the motor housing. The washer throws an F08 code because it's detecting an open circuit in the motor. Now, here's where people mess up. They see motor problem and think they need to replace the whole motor assembly. That's a dollar 200 plus mistake when you could fix it with $15 worth of brushes. If your machine fills and drains but won't spin, and you've got one of those older WFK models, this is probably your culprit. You can actually access the motor and visually check the brushes. They should be more than half an inch long to make proper contact. This one shows up mainly on top load models and some of the newer inverter units. What happens here is the machine isn't getting a valid signal from the pressure sensor. That's the component that tells the control board how much water is in the tub. I had one customer whose F8 error would pop up the instant he turned the machine on, couldn't even select a cycle. Turned out mice had gotten into the machine and chewed through the brown wire going to the pressure sensor. Don't ask me how I know that, but rodents love to chew on appliance wiring. Sometimes it's not critter damage though. Could be corrosion at the connector points or the sensor itself just failing. The tricky part is this looks exactly like a control board problem because the error shows up immediately when you power on the machine. But before you go replacing expensive electronics, check that pressure sensor wiring harness. Look for any cuts, chew marks, or black corrosion around the connectors. Way cheaper to splice a wire than replace a control board. The door lock assembly costs around $50 and takes about 30 minutes to replace. Here's what you'll need: a flathead screwdriver and needle nose pliers. The good news: most Bosch models use a tab lock system instead of screws. You'll carefully pull back the rubber door seal to access the lock assembly, then gently squeeze the plastic tabs to release it. Always work slowly with these tabs, forcing them can crack the housing. This is definitely a DIY friendly repair if you're comfortable working with your hands. Just make sure you unplug the machine first. These door locks carry 120 volts and can bite you. The key is being gentle with those plastic tabs when you're removing the old one. I've seen people crack the housing trying to force things. Carbon brushes are the cheapest fix on this whole list. We're talking under $20 for a set. The catch is getting to them requires accessing the motor, which means pulling the machine apart pretty significantly. You'll need to remove panels and possibly drop the motor depending on your model, but if you're handy with tools, this is totally doable. The brushes themselves just slide into holders. No special skills needed once you can reach them. Just make sure you get the right part number for your specific motor. The pressure sensor itself runs maybe 30 to $50 if the component is actually bad, but here's the thing. Most of the time it's not the sensor, it's the wiring. If you can identify where the wire got damaged, you might be looking at a free fix with some electrical tape or wire nuts. The sensor sits under the top cover on most models, so it's pretty accessible. Just follow the wires and look for obvious damage before you start throwing parts at the problem. All right, if you're dealing with faulty parts, let's talk about what you're looking at cost-wise and whether this is worth fixing yourself. The good news is most of these parts are pretty reasonable, but accessing some of them requires a bit of disassembly work. You can see right there on your screen the most common Bosch models that run into these F8 issues. The WFP and WAE series tend to have the door latch problems, while the older WFK units are more prone to the motor brush wear. If you spot your model up there, you're definitely not alone with this problem. Here's your action plan for fixing the Bosch F8 error. Start with the 10-minute door reset procedure I showed you first. This solves the problem 70% of the time. If that doesn't work, check your model number against the list on screen to determine whether you likely have a door lock, motor brush, or pressure sensor issue. Most repairs cost under $50 in parts compared to a $200 service call. Most of the time, you're looking at a $50 fix instead of a $200 service call. If this helped you get your Bosch washer working again, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know which fix worked for you. Really helps other people with the same problem. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We'll get this out to more folks who need to save some time and money. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.